Hey everybody. So I got a lot of work to do, but I have to record these. This has been plaguing my mind, and as I've been listening to the news this today and all week long, during this supposed to be a transition, you know, then 2012 Republicans said, we need to do an audit. We need to self-reflect to see how in the hell we lost so badly. And then they never did. And one of their conclusions was, well, we probably shouldn't bash Mexicans the way that we did. We might not lose the Latino vote. And then they went on build the wall. So they learned nothing. Hopefully, with now you have so many Republicans that have left the party, maybe now we can bridge this gap here. Because I argue and I argue that people like Nicole Wallace and Steve Schmidt, they're not Republicans. In fact, I don't think there should be a Republican Party anymore. Let's be real. The Republican Party, which used to be the party of Lincoln, was formed in response to abolition. The Democrats were the party of segregationists. In other words, these are parties that are so old and archaic, they do not fit any of us. Not Democrats, not Republicans. Instead, we're born and feel like we have to choose a side, which has left us in this left-right conundrum. And so, again, we're the new progressives for a reason. Uh, the disaffected Republican said a few days ago, well, maybe we need a third party. Yeah, we need a party that represents this generation. And this generation doesn't fall along those kinds of lines. And so, and the question, excuse me, was asked today on Nicole Wallace. I think Nicole Wallace asked this question. How did the Republican Party get so corrupted? And I love Nicole Wallace, which is amazing because she used to piss me off when she worked for John McCain because she's very smart. And I have an answer. Oh, it's easy. And let's start here. I'm going to read this to you because the audio won't record, but you can listen to it for yourself. The Nation published this. Well, what was this? They published this a few years ago in 2012. Matter of fact, the exclusive Lee Atwater's famous comments on the Southern strategy. Now, the way the Nation categorizes it, they say the late legendarily brutal campaign consultant Lee Atwater explains how Republicans can win the vote of racists without sounding racist themselves. Now, this is from 1981. You start out this is him quoting. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, 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 nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts you. Backfires. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract. Now you're talking about cutting taxes. And all these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And a byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. You want to cut this is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, nigger. There's your answer. Let's be honest, the Republicans switched parties in response to the civil rights movement. When LBJ voted for the Civil Rights and made the Civil Rights Act happen and the Voting Rights Act happen, Democrats, racist Democrats and segregationists said, you'll never get our vote again. Lyndon Baines Johnson was a Democrat. And all the racists, the segregationists, were Democrats. And so they said, F you. Just like you have Republicans now, like, oh, we ain't like Trump. And so they've left their party. They're not Democrats. Oh, God forbid. But they're like, we don't want to be associated with that. And so those racists from the segregationist party took over the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. It was formed to abolish slavery. And this has been their guiding principle. low taxes, small government. In other words, keep giving money to the people with the most wealth so that the Black people that are just now getting their start in the 60s and 70s has been oppressed from the history of this country, had no generational wealth basically in the 60s. Well, let's not let them get it now. Let's lower taxes. Let's cut programs, right? They've been doing that for 40 years, as long as I've been alive. How did y'all get corrupted? Let's start there. That's one. I mean, when I was a kid in the 80s in elementary school when Reagan was running. And here's a simple thing. Here's a really small thing. As a little kid, I was being raised in church, learning about Jesus. I remember one thing. I remember the first time I thought, why would, when Reagan linked up with the so-called Christian right? And it was that year, I remember like they used to have DNC fundraisers and RNC fundraisers during campaigns. But that was the first time it was like $100,000 a plate. It used to be like $10,000 a plate, which was expensive. They go to a Democratic National Committee meeting or fundraiser. The Republicans linked up with the Christian right, and it was like, well, you got to be rich to play in this ball game. In other words, y'all have always been hypocrites. That party has always been loaded down with hypocrites. And every 2 to 4 years, y'all been pulling your monsters out of the basement. You've been riling up your racists on this states' rights and small government shit every 2 to 4 years to get them to vote for you elites that can afford $100,000 plate dinners. And then when the election's over, you shove them back in their basement. Well, what happened? That the monsters took over the asylum. Obama derangement syndrome. 2008, we elected the first Black president, and they went crazy. And instead of doing as John McCain did and say, okay, the campaign's over, let's all rally behind our new president. Yeah, y'all, the Republican establishment, the tea baggers, the Tea Party, all of you encouraged them to stay in the game. You riled up their races. Mitch McConnell, we're never going to let our number one goal is to obstruct anything he does. You had the tea baggers come out and fight against healthcare, their own healthcare. All you had to do was say, those people are taking over. And President Obama told you, and a lot of us were saying, y'all are creating a monster. Y'all are creating a monster that y'all are not going to be able to control. Y'all are letting them out and saying, yeah, because you couldn't win anymore, because you knew you had the minority. And so to hang on to your slim bit of minority power, you needed them. You needed them to not let this first Black president be who he was, a kick-ass president, because then white people will never get elected again. Just like now, you're saying Republicans will never get elected again if everybody votes. If you want to fix it. You can't fix anything if you lie about what the problem is, or if you refuse to actually examine it. You have to examine yourselves. Jesus said we have to constantly examine ourselves and accept the guilt. I hear Joe Scarborough all the time act like these Trump Republicans, oh, where did they come from? They're not like us. And the Reagan conservatives, you know how hilarious that is? See, you're still blind. You're still covered up one eye. You have to claim responsibility. As much as you keep telling Donald Trump to take responsibility for his extraordinary failures and incompetence, well, we agree on that. But here's another thing y'all have to take responsibility for. You created this monster. Newt Gingrich, Joe Scarborough, Boehner, all of y'all. Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, y'all been doing this for decades. And you were able to control them. You were able to bring them out every once in a while just to win an election. It got close in 2000, too close for comfort. You had to remember to do the terror alerts in 2004 to scare them again so that they would keep Bush in office. And in 2008, the majority spoke. And as I've been saying, this generation doesn't care about that shit. You're fighting a war that started in 1960 to try to hold people like me back and my family because we got the right to vote. Look at what's happening now. Trump is challenging votes only in the most diverse and areas of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where there are black people. In other words, if all these black people didn't vote, we'd win. Right. But we have the right to vote too, because FYI, we're Americans and our votes matter and the majority rules. And in fact, our majority is inclusive of a bunch of white people, a bunch of Latinos, a bunch of indigenous people. Yeah, we are the big tent party. But we're not even Democrats. I argue we're not Democrats because, see, being Democrats or Republicans keep us stuck in that right-left debate. I mean, are you going forward if you're going left or right? We need to go forward. We have too many serious issues that we're dealing with to be stuck in neutral, going left to right, this tug of war stuck in place. These issues don't reflect our times. And that's why you're losing power, because you're still arguing from a 60s perspective, a racist perspective. And we're anti-racist, we're anti-fascists. And you're not going to change that. And so you see in stark numbers, the 25 to 30% that have been brainwashed on this stuff for decades. And they're like, you can't shove us back in the basement. We run this shit now. And they're like, oh, these people, those people. When they were useful, as long as they went back to their basements, they were fine. But don't act like y'all didn't create these monsters. You did. And until you all take responsibility for that, there is no Republican Party. There's the party of Trump. And yeah, they will continue to infest and infect this country and the body politic unless you all have a come to Jesus meeting about how you created these monsters, until you break this 1960s hold that Lee Atwater's had on y'all. He's dead. Let it go. And here's the thing. Be positive, because here's one thing that I did learn. Here's one thing y'all weren't some of y'all, a lot of you, I'll give you, weren't hypocritical about. And here's where we all find common ground. Isn't that what we're looking for? We're not going to find common ground against the racial issues. We're not going to find common ground against small government and low taxes bullshit, that racist shit and states' rights. Now, we're not going to find common ground. I'm not meeting you halfway there. That doesn't work in our democracy. Here's what I did discover, pleasantly surprised to discover over this last few years. Why so many Republicans like Michael Steele and David Jolly and Steve Schmitz and Nicole Wallace's are like, yeah, I can't be a part of this, because they're not racists. They've been supporting racist policies and a racist agenda without, and I know that most of them didn't even recognize it as racist, but now you do. I'm telling you, it is. Lee Atwater told you it was. Here's what we have in common, and this is the most important thing to have in common in this country, in this democracy. We're all patriots. I've been pleasantly surprised with how patriotic y'all actually are, because you've given a lot of lip service over the years. I can't call it patriotism when you start a fake war, when there's a real war that has to be fought after an attack on our homeland. No, I mean, that wasn't patriotic to go attack a foreign country that hadn't attacked us. No, I mean, y'all have used, patriotism as another wielding tool to bring out your monsters. USA, USA, and your four against is, to separate us on patriotic terms. But Trump has really focused all of our minds, hasn't he? That I said in 2016, and I know nobody saw it because people barely watch this, but there was only one question up for debate in 2016, and it was the same one in 2020. Are you a patriot? I now know that if this was 1776, we'd be fighting on the same side. That we would all take up arms to defend this country together, regardless of our political persuasions, regardless of how we see the world politically. What we do agree on is that this is a good government. This is a good system. And it requires good people to make it work. And so we have to stand up. And we can stand up, we can build from that. Oh, that's the fundamental thing to build from. I want y'all to think about this. I want y'all to think about not being Democrats, not being Republicans. How about let's all go forward? Let's progress. And I know progressives has been associated with liberals, and yeah, I mean it literally. The word progress is not a negative, it's a positive. It means going forward. Let's move forward. The world rotates forward, time moves forward. We need to move forward. Yes. And I think we can do it together. And in fact, we make up a big majority. People that agree that, yeah, you can have responsible gun ownership, but damn it, we need real laws to regulate weapons of war. That, yes, it should be a right. It shouldn't be, can you afford to live and afford healthcare? Everybody should have the right to access to healthcare in this country. There are so many things. Climate change is real. Yeah, we need to do something about it. There's so many things that we all agree on, but our parties and that whole 60-year dichotomy that has plagued us is still keeping us in separate corners. And I kept saying in 2016, well, after we get rid of Trump, then we can fall back to our own corners. But no, that's not going to do either. We'll fall back down, and Michael still said that recently. We'll all fall back on our own side. No, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's do something different. Let's make a real change. And let's do it together. This is where we can have healthy debates, because inside of the New Progressives, as long as you're using fact and reason and not coming up with some dumb shit, and I know y'all love it because you're smart. Well, let's have it out. Let's talk about the best ways to move forward with the things that we agree on. Because literally the things that we agree on are the things that we need. We don't need to talk about the extraneous little goofy shit. Let's talk about the important shit that we agree needs to happen, and let's discuss and debate the ways that we can get it done. And let's do it together. But let's all take a knee together. Let's all stand together and applaud our troops together again. There's 75% of us who agree. Let's not fall back down to the same sides that we've been on that are fake and illusions, so that this creepy minority bastardized Republican Party hangs on to power for power's sake. That's all this has been about since the 80s. I need y'all to let it go so that we can have a new vision and a new start to this American century. Okay? Think about it. Thank you.